Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. The audacity of theirs, threatening to fire our OP for others stealing her food, just blows my mind. More right after a short pause. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You like to steal food? Take that. I'm reminded of the story my stepmother told me when she was a grad student in college. This was in a tiny college town. Everything revolved around the university. One of her very attractive friends worked part-time in one of the school offices as part of her work study. Most of the rest of the office staff, a couple dozen people, were made up of judgmental, jealous, gossipy, middle-aged married women. My stepmom's friend often got candy, flowers, and other small tokens from young men trying to win her affection. She would usually bring the candy in and leave them out for the others to enjoy, to keep herself from eating them all. She had a weakness for one type of chocolate truffle, though, and told everyone those were off limits and would hide them in her desk. Well, people would ignore that, go through her desk anyways, the locks were a joke, and eat them all. She complained to management, but they just gaffed her off and refused to do anything. She was told if she didn't want people taking her candy, then to stop bringing it in. She decided that was bullcrap, so she came up with a cunning plan. One of her friends was a grad student in entomology, the study of insects. One of the things they were working on for their thesis was using insects for food. It's common in many cultures outside of Europe and North America to eat insects, and they're quite nutritious. She had saved one of the largest of her old candy boxes, and her friend made a variety of candy-coated insects and filled it up. They even made up a new label that read Hexapod Candy Company, with fancy descriptions of the contents, including the species named buried in the fine print. She waited until the day of the weekly staff meeting that always took place in the late afternoon right before quitting time. She made a big show of bringing in the candy that morning and putting it in her desk. She even staged several pieces of regular candy in it and made sure people saw her eating them. Come class time, she made sure people knew she was leaving for her classes and would be back in time for the meeting later in the afternoon. When she came back, more than half the candy was gone. She brought the box to the meeting and noticed several of her coworkers were smirking. At the end of the meeting, when they asked if anyone had anything to add, she stood up and raised hell about people stealing her candy. She said that people had eaten more than half the box, including all the chocolate-covered caterpillars, the caramel grubs, and her favorite, the chocolate-covered crickets. A few of her coworkers turned green and ran for the bathroom, and one didn't make it. She got yanked into the boss's office, and they threatened to fire her from her work study and even kick her out of school. She told him to go ahead, she'd see him in court. She'd done nothing wrong. Everything she'd brought in was perfectly edible and even had been labeled with exactly what it was. She'd complained multiple times about theft of her property, and they refused to do anything about it. It wasn't her fault if they broke into her desk and stole her food. She countered with saying anyone who ate her candy should be fired for breaking into her locked desk for theft. They knew they didn't have any grounds to do anything and backed down. After that, nobody messed with her candy again. And our second story. I don't control the socks. I'm currently working 2 retail jobs, both of which I love. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm honestly passionate about working in retail. One of which is in a novelty stationery store. We sell a large range of items, including notebooks and pens, but also items ideal for gifting, like cushions, mugs, and even toys. Since it's a novelty store, a lot of items contain rude words and phrases that anyone with a decent sense of humor would have a good chuckle at. We've been told by the company that the only rude words we don't censor are SHIT and PISS. Everything else is allowed, but must have a yellow sticker over the word. At the checkout, we always have a promotional item that's on a WAP with any purchase deal, meaning if you buy any item in store, you can get a discount on the WAP item, usually about half price to 2/3 off. We're encouraged to sell as many of these as possible, and whoever sells the most usually gets one of them as a reward. Since the store opened 4 months ago, I've won twice. We normally do this by explaining the offer to customers as they're paying for their purchases. Currently, the WAP item is fuzzy slipper socks, which have actually been selling pretty well. There's a great range of them, and even though the favorite, green with googly eyes, have sold out, lots of people have been buying them since they're only paying a third of the original price. I'd been noticing this week that there were a lot of kids coming in with their parents, which I later found out was due to a school holiday, so I'd been warning customers that one pair had a swear word on the soles of the socks. The phrase in question was F-U-C-K today, just in case, as I'd had people returning to the store when they realized they've bought something with a swear word on it. On this particular day, I had one customer, I believe she was in her late 50s to early 60s. As I knew people have bought these as presents, I decided to let her know that one pair had a swear word on it, even though she was there alone and didn't have any kids with her. The moment I did, she broke into a rant about how swearing is the worst thing people can do, about how I'm a bad parent for selling this item, about how I need to tell the company to stop making these items, about how if people didn't swear, a well-known TV presenter in my country wouldn't have committed suicide recently, and the world would be a better place if people didn't swear. I didn't even say the particular word to her. I just explained that they had a swear word on them in case she bought it for a 5-year-old thinking they were normal black slipper socks. My colleague was standing next to me while this happened, and I could read her mind. I knew the both of us were as desperate to say the F word to see if she fainted. Normally, I meant to ask if she'd like to purchase an additional charity item, but after that rant, I knew what the answer would be, so I just gritted my teeth, gave her total, and finished the transaction. The young man behind her was close to bursting out laughing and even had a laugh with me about it, and the second I'd finished serving customers, my colleague and I turned to each other and asked, "Didn't you just want to tell her if she doesn't like it to F off?" On the plus side, for the rest of the day, I used the story of the woman who hated swears whenever I told anyone about our socks, and it got a lot of laughs and sympathy, which ended in more than a few people buying them. So I guess the world won't be watching its language anytime soon. And our next story. I can't help, I'm pregnant. Okay, so this happened a few years back, long before the pandemic. Me and my husband had been trying to get pregnant for 2 years, and we finally went through a fertility clinic, and we were finally pregnant and couldn't be more excited. At about the 6-week mark, I had a friend call me up out of the blue. We chatted for a bit. I mentioned my pregnancy, and she told me how they were moving and wanted to borrow my husband's truck so they could save a little money. I asked my husband, and he said it was fine. Me is me, CB choosing beggar. Me, so how do you want to do this? Are you going to come and pick it up? I asked. CB, I really don't have time. I'm still packing up stuff. Can you drop it off and we can hang, and afterward you can take it back home? I wasn't thrilled about driving all that way, but I had already pretty much agreed, so I said, okay, that I can drop it by and bring the truck with me. Once I arrived, she was still wrapping things up and packing things away. I was kind of hoping she'd have it mostly packed away, but it was only for just a few boxes. I sighed, but asked if I could help her a little bit. CB, where's your husband? Wasn't he coming too? She asked. Me, no, he's still working right now. Why would he be coming anyway? I asked because they didn't know each other too well and he was working. CB, but I needed him to help haul the heavy stuff. I can't do it by myself, she began to whine. Me, we offered to let you borrow the truck, not to help you pack and haul things. And just so you know, I can't stay here all day long. I don't really like driving at night. I said, why not I come back tomorrow when you have more packed and ready to go, I asked. CB, I still need help, though, with the heavy stuff. I think we can move it ourselves, she said. Me, I really can't be lifting things over 25 pounds. True, I was only 6 weeks along, but since it took us so long to get pregnant in the first place, I wasn't going to do anything that could potentially harm my baby. Besides, I never agreed to help her move in the first place. CB, don't be stupid. You can help me out. You're barely pregnant anyway, she said condescendingly. Me, that comment made me mad. Okay, first off, there's no such thing as barely pregnant. You either are or are not. There's no in between. And I never said I was going to help you move. I said you could borrow the truck. I'm going back home now. You can figure this out on your own. I know she was screaming at me as I left and was blowing up my phone for a while before she just gave up. I read a post on Facebook about how I'd promised her all this BS and flaked out on her. We haven't spoken in a long while, but honestly, I don't need that type of person in my life. And our last story. Entitled uncle wants to park totaled truck in other family's yard. Just to make things easier, entitled uncle equals Corey, good uncle equals Paul, entitled cousins, Uncle Corey's kids, equal Lon, 30-year-old male, Cole, 27-year-old male, Kate, Cole's wife. My family has a large compound, hundreds of acres, that my grandparents have divided among their kids. My mom and Paul get half the land and Uncle Corey gets the other half. Their property lines have already been determined. Some background. Uncle Corey has always been the entitled sibling and is the most shameless person I've ever met. He takes advantage of the rest of our very nice and conflict-averse family at every opportunity, especially my grandparents, his parents. My grandparents frequently have to bail him out of financial trouble, even though Uncle Corey makes six figures and, hilariously, has a master's degree in economics. For example, my grandparents have paid off Uncle Corey's mortgages multiple times during his life. Uncle Corey recently built a new house on his chunk of the land, and Cole and Kate also have an ill-kept home there, but there's still tons of space left. Paul also recently built a very nice house on his and my mom's chunk of land, where Paul lives with his partner Will. Will and Paul work hard to maintain their lovely home and handle upkeep of the property. Kate recently totaled a truck, which Uncle Corey inexplicably wants to keep. But instead of keeping it on his land, Uncle Corey is demanding that the truck be stored in Paul's yard. Will and Paul, of course, said no. Because they said no, Cousin Lon messages Paul and says Will needs to learn his place. Will's not white, and Lon is known to be racist. I cannot for the life of me understand why Uncle Corey and his kids are so insistent that this piece of junk be stored at Paul's house and not on their own land. This is ridiculous levels of entitlement, right? Honestly, the trashy uncle keeps getting away with it because nobody's cracking down on his stupidity. So I wouldn't expect any changes without some enforcement with somebody like that. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.